sleeve in the middle of the applause, while the entire open plan office was still clapping for a man holding a cake with "Congratulations, Trevor" written across it in blue icing, and pointed toward a woman sitting alone at a desk near the back, not clapping at all. "Why is that lady so sad, Daddy?" she asked, loud enough that a few people nearby actually heard it over the noise. "I want to tell you plainly. This story deals with someone's cancer treatment, though I'm going to keep the medical details general, because the real story here isn't about her illness at all. It's about what got taken from her while she was dealing with it, and what her CEO did once he found out. Here's how it unfolded. Corbin Wallace was 44, the CEO of a mid-sized data analytics firm in Austin, and he'd brought his daughter Josie into the office that Friday afternoon after her preschool let out early, planning to finish a short stretch of work before they headed home. He walked into the middle of an impromptu celebration in the main office area. His newly promoted director of strategic insights, Trevor Lang, 33, accepting congratulations and a sheet cake for a proposal that had, according to the leadership team's own account, single-handedly reshaped the company's approach to a major client renewal 3 months earlier. Corbin had approved the promotion himself 2 weeks prior. Based on a presentation Trevor had given to the executive team that Corbin still considered one of the sharpest strategic pitches he'd seen in years. Josie's question landed at an inconvenient moment, in the middle of a room full of clapping colleagues, and Corbin, a little embarrassed, gently steered her attention elsewhere without answering it directly. But the question stayed with him. For the rest of the afternoon, the particular way a child's plain observation sometimes does, and before he left that evening, he made a point of stopping by the desk Josie had pointed at. The woman sitting there was Maya Sinclair, 42, a senior data strategist who had been with the company for 8 years, longer than almost anyone else on the analytics team. She was quiet, focused, entirely professional when Corbin greeted her, giving no outward indication that anything was wrong beyond the ordinary tiredness of a long week. "Everything all right, Maya?" Corbin asked, mostly out of the polite habit of checking in, not yet connecting this conversation to his daughter's question a few hours earlier. "Everything's fine," Maya said, with the careful, practiced evenness of someone who had gotten good at giving that exact answer, regardless of whether it was fully true. "Just a long week." Corbin might have left it there entirely if Josie, waiting nearby with her coloring book, hadn't looked up at exactly that moment and said, with the same plain directness she'd used earlier, "You still look sad." Maya's composure slipped just slightly, just for a second, before she caught it again. "I'm okay, sweetheart," she said gently. "Sometimes grown-ups look tired even when they're fine." I don't think Corbin fully understood, in that moment, what he was actually looking at. What he understood, clearly enough to act on, was that something in that exchange didn't add up, and that his own daughter had noticed it hours before he had. Here's what Corbin learned over the following week, piecing it together carefully rather than all at once. Maya had been diagnosed with breast cancer 14 months earlier, and had spent much of the past year managing an intermittent treatment schedule alongside her work, taking medical leave for surgery, and, later, a demanding stretch of chemotherapy that had required her to step back from the office for nearly 10 weeks that spring. She'd continued working part-time and remotely through much of it when she was able, determined, in her own words, not to let the diagnosis define the shape of her career, though the physical toll had been, by any honest account, considerable. 3 months before that cake in the office, right before her 10-week medical leave began, Maya had drafted and shared in a preliminary team folder the core framework for exactly the client renewal strategy that had, in Trevor's presentation, been credited entirely to him. I want to be careful here about how I describe what actually happened, because I don't think this story is served by making Trevor into a simple, flat villain, and I don't think that's an honest account of what emerged once Corbin looked closely at it. Trevor had been passed over for promotion twice in the 2 years before this, both times, by his own later account, watching colleagues with less tenure move ahead of him while he grew increasingly anxious about supporting a family on a salary that had stalled well below what he'd expected at this point in his career. When Maya went on leave, leaving behind a detailed, unfinished framework in a shared folder that, as far as Trevor could tell in the moment, nobody else on the team was actively developing. He told himself, in the particular self-justifying logic people sometimes reach for under real pressure, that finishing and presenting the work himself wasn't really theft, just initiative, since Maya's leave timeline was uncertain and the client renewal deadline wasn't going to wait. That rationalization, whatever Trevor told himself in the moment, didn't survive the actual evidence once Corbin's operations team pulled the shared drive's edit history at his request. The file's version log showed, in plain, time-stamped detail, that the framework's core structure, the client segmentation model, and nearly all of the strategic recommendations Trevor had presented as his own had been authored by Maya in full more than 3 weeks before Trevor had ever opened the document at all. "I want to understand something," Corbin said, when he finally sat down with Trevor directly. "Did you believe at the time that this was primarily your own work?" Trevor didn't try to maintain the story once the evidence was in front of him. "No," he admitted after a long silence. "Told myself it was close enough to justified because I finished it and presented it well. I knew that wasn't really true, even while I was doing it. I was scared of getting passed over a third time, and I made a choice I already regret more than I think I fully let myself feel until right now. I think that honesty, uncomfortable as it clearly was to give, matters to how this story should be understood. Trevor's fear was real, and the pressure he was under was real, and neither of those things excuses what he did. He took credit, deliberately, for work he knew belonged to a colleague who was, at the exact moment he made that choice, dealing with a serious illness, and in no position to immediately notice or contest it. I also want to be clear about something else, because I think it matters enormously to how Maya herself should be understood in this story. She was not a passive victim, quietly wronged by circumstance. When Corbin finally asked her directly what had happened, she told him plainly, with the same measured professionalism she brought to everything else, that she had, in fact, noticed almost immediately upon returning from leave that her framework had become the foundation of Trevor's celebrated proposal. "I thought about saying something," Maya told Corbin. "I decided against it, mostly because I was exhausted from treatment and didn't have the energy for a fight I wasn't sure I'd win, especially once he'd already gotten the credit publicly. I've built an 8-year career here on being excellent at my job. I didn't want my return from medical leave as to be defined by a dispute people might read as sour grapes from someone who'd just been out sick for 10 weeks. I want you to notice the calculation in that decision, because I think it says considerably more about the environment she was navigating than it does about her own character." Maya wasn't uncertain of her own competence. She was accurately reading the risk of raising a credit dispute against a colleague who'd already been publicly celebrated, weighing that risk against her own limited energy during an already difficult year, and making the same kind of quiet, protective calculation so many people in vulnerable positions end up making when a system offers them no clear, safe path to be heard. Corbin didn't handle what came next by simply reversing Trevor's promotion and calling the matter closed, though I imagine that would have been the simplest response available to him. He met with Maya first to ask directly what outcome would actually feel right to her, rather than assuming he already knew. What resulted over the following month was a genuine restructuring rather than a single swap. Maya was promoted into a newly formalized senior strategist role, one that recognized both the client renewal framework and her broader 8-year body of work, with compensation and title reflecting the seniority her contributions had long since earned. Trevor was not terminated, a decision Corbin explained carefully to his leadership team as a deliberate choice to account for genuine documented accountability rather than pure punishment. Trevor was moved out of the director role required to formally correct the record with the client team that had received the original presentation and placed on a structured improvement plan with clear expectations alongside mandatory participation in the same credit attribution training Corbin built in the weeks that followed into a company-wide policy. That policy, developed jointly with HR and Maya herself, who asked specifically to be involved in shaping it, required documented authorship verification for any major project cited in a promotion case, alongside a formal, confidential channel for raising credit disputes that didn't require an employee to publicly challenge a colleague's already announced success in order to be heard. It also included a specific provision addressing exactly the gap that had let this happen in the first place. A structured reintegration review for any employee returning from extended medical leave, ensuring ongoing project work was properly tracked and attributed during their absence, rather than left ambiguous enough for exactly this kind of quiet reassignment of credit to occur. Maya still works at the company, now leading the strategic insights team, in the role that, by every honest account of the actual work involved, had been hers to build from the beginning. Her treatment, as of this telling, has moved into a maintenance phase her doctors describe as encouraging, though she's said plainly, more than once, that she doesn't love being asked to narrate her prognosis for other people's comfort. A boundary Corbin has made a point of respecting completely. Josie still visits the office some Fridays, and Maya, these days, makes a point of stopping by her desk to say hello. A small ritual neither of them has ever fully explained to the other, though Corbin suspects they both understand exactly what it's built on. If there's something worth taking from this one, it's that the people who stay quiet about being wronged are so rarely doing it because they lack the strength to speak up. They're often doing careful, exhausting math about what speaking up will actually cost them, in a system that hasn't yet built them a safe enough path to be heard. And it takes someone paying real attention, sometimes someone as small and unguarded as a 3-year-old, asking why a colleague looks sad, to notice the math isn't adding up before it's too late to fix. Let me know in the comments what part of this stayed with you most. If you're new here, subscribe. We've got a story like this every week. And if there's someone near you who's gone quiet about something that was never actually theirs to just absorb, maybe it's worth asking why. I'll see you in the next one.